The massive ship came out of hyperspace with a flash of blue light. Inside the viewing deck, hundreds of young aliens pressed their faces against the clear walls. They stared at the huge structure floating in space ahead of them. The Galactic Combat Academy looked like a small moon made of metal and glass. Its surface was covered with training grounds, weapon ranges, and combat arenas. Bright lights moved across its surface like veins of energy. Heon pressed his scaled face against the window. His yellow eyes gleamed with excitement. As a Velcarian, he was proud of his people's reputation as the fastest warriors in the galaxy. His kind could move so quickly that other species could barely see them. Sharp claws extended from his fingers as he flexed his hands. He had trained his whole life for this moment. "Look at the size of that place," he said to the alien standing next to him. "I bet most of these weaklings won't last a week." Day turned toward him with a sound like metal grinding against stone. The Christek's body was made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. His race was known for having the best tactical minds in space. They could process information faster than any computer. "My calculations show that 67% of new students drop out in the first month," Day said. His voice sounded like music played through speakers. The weak ones always reveal themselves quickly. Behind them, Nari spread her wings and laughed. The Zephyrian stood 7 feet tall with silver feathers that caught the light. Her people could fly through space using only their natural wings. They were born warriors who ruled the skies of a dozen worlds. "At least we won't have to worry about those pathetic humans this year," she said. Her voice was sharp and cutting. "I heard they finally gave up trying to get into real military schools." Tay bubbled with laughter from the corner. The Aquaran's blue skin was wet and shiny. Gills on his neck opened and closed as he breathed. His people lived in the deep oceans of their world and could fight underwater better than anyone. Large, black eyes stared at his new classmates. "Humans," Tay said with disgust. "I heard they can't even breathe underwater for more than a few minutes. How could they ever fight a real battle?" The transport ship docked with the academy with a soft bump. Thousands of students began moving through the corridors toward the main assembly hall. The hall was enormous, big enough to hold a small city. The ceiling showed a view of the stars outside. Floating platforms carried students to their seats based on their species and home worlds. Hyeon found himself sitting with other predator species. Around him sat beings with claws, fangs, and natural weapons. Some had armor-like skin. Others had poison in their bite. All of them were proud of their fighting abilities. Day sat with the other intelligent species. These aliens had large brains, multiple eyes, or computer-like minds. They would become the strategists and planners of future armies. Their job was to think of new ways to win battles. Nari took her place with the flyers. Winged beings from dozens of worlds sat together. Some had feathers like her. Others had bat-like wings or transparent membranes. All of them looked down on the ground-bound species with pride. Tay joined the aquatic species in a special section filled with water. Floating tanks let them breathe while attending the ceremony. Their section was separated from the others by thick glass walls. A deep voice echoed through the hall. All talking stopped immediately. On the main stage, a figure appeared in a flash of light. Commandant Vexathul was a member of the ancient Void Walker race. His body looked like it was made of living shadow, wrapped in a military uniform. 2 bright red eyes glowed where his face should be. "Welcome to the Galactic Combat Academy," his voice boomed. "You are here because your species believes you have what it takes to become warriors. Most of you are wrong." A nervous silence filled the hall. The commandant's red eyes swept across the thousands of students. "This academy has trained the greatest fighters in galactic history. We have produced generals who conquered star systems. We have created soldiers who never lost a battle. We have built the finest military minds in known space." He paused, and his eyes seemed to focus on different sections of students. "But we do not accept everyone. Some species lack the mental strength for war. Some lack the physical ability to survive combat. And some, he paused again, are simply too dangerous to train alongside others. Murmurs started throughout the hall. Students looked at each other with confusion. Which brings me to an important announcement, Vexthul continued. Effective. Immediately, humans are permanently banned from this academy. They will not be considered for admission now or in the future. The hall erupted in laughter. The sound was deafening as thousands of aliens from hundreds of species all laughed at once. Heon slapped his knee with his clawed hand. Humans banned? He shouted to his section. What's next? Are they going to ban house pets too? Dai's crystal body flashed with amusement. I calculate that humans would rank last in every single combat category. Banning them is actually an act of mercy. Nari's laughter was like the cry of a hunting bird. I heard they tried to apply for years. Can you imagine? Those soft, weak creatures thinking they could train with real warriors? Even the aquatic species were laughing underwater. Tay's gills fluttered with amusement. Humans can barely swim. How did they think they could fight in three-dimensional space combat? The commandant raised one shadowy hand and the laughter slowly died down. The decision was made after careful consideration of their performance in preliminary trials, he said. Humans lack the basic physical and mental requirements for military training. They are too slow, too weak, and too simple-minded for advanced combat instruction. More laughter rippled through the crowd. Students began sharing jokes about humans they had heard. I heard they still use projectile weapons, one alien called out. They can't even see in the dark, shouted another. My cousin said they need machines to help them breathe in space, a third student added. Hyun stood up in his seat. Commandant, were any humans actually enrolled here before? Vexthul's red eyes focused on him. 3 humans attended this academy last year. They completed their courses and left. Their performance confirmed our decision to implement the ban. What were their scores? Day asked. His analytical mind wanted exact numbers. Dead last in every category, the commandant replied. Physical strength, speed, reflexes, tactical analysis, weapons training, survival skills. They ranked below every other student in academy history. The laughter grew even louder. Some students were holding their sides. Others were wiping tears from their eyes. How did they even survive a full year? Nari called out. Barely, Vexthul answered. They required constant medical attention and additional tutoring. Several safety protocols had to be implemented to prevent serious injury during their training. Tay bubbled with amusement. They probably couldn't even handle basic physical conditioning. The details of their performance are classified, the commandant said firmly. What matters is that the experiment failed. Humans do not belong in military academies. They belong on their small planet, doing whatever simple tasks they can manage. The ceremony continued with the standard academy, rules and procedures. But the students weren't really listening anymore. They kept making jokes about humans and laughing at the idea of those weak creatures trying to become warriors. As they left the assembly hall, the 4 friends walked together. Jan was still chuckling. I almost feel sorry for them. Imagine, being so weak that you get banned from a school. Logic suggests they never had a chance, Day agreed. Humans are probably the weakest species in the galaxy. Nari flapped her wings with amusement. At least we won't have to waste time protecting them during training exercises. Tay's gills bubbled as he laughed. This year is going to be so much better without those pathetic humans around. None of them noticed the worried look in the commandant's red eyes as they left. None of them saw him delete several files from his personal computer. And none of them heard him whisper to himself, "Some truths are too dangerous to tell." 3 months had passed since the opening ceremony. The academy was running at full speed with thousands of students training every day. The 4 friends had become close during their time together. They shared meals, studied together, and competed in training exercises. Hyun had proven himself to be one of the fastest students in his class. His Valkyrian reflexes made him nearly impossible to hit during combat simulations. He could dodge laser blasts and move between cover faster than most species could even see. Day excelled in tactical planning classes. His crystal mind could process battle scenarios and find winning strategies in seconds. Professors often used his solutions as examples for other students. Nari dominated the aerial combat courses. Her natural flying ability gave her a huge advantage in three-dimensional fighting. She could dive, climb, and turn in ways that left other students confused and defeated. Tae was unbeatable in underwater operations. During aquatic training exercises, he moved through the water like liquid lightning. Even other water-breathing species couldn't match his speed and grace. The four friends were sitting in Professor Kolmesh's tactical analysis classroom. The old Krillian professor was known for his boring lectures, but his classes were required for graduation. His insect-like body clicked and buzzed as he moved around the front of the room. "Today we will study the Battle of Zerion Prime," Professor Kolmesh announced. His compound eyes reflected the light from the holographic display system. "This battle changed the way we think about space combat tactics." The professor moved to his control panel to bring up the historical battle footage. His 6 legs moved in perfect coordination as he adjusted the settings. But something went wrong with the computer system. Instead of showing the Battle of Zerion Prime, a different file appeared on the main screen. The image was dark and unclear. It showed what looked like a large arena with metal walls and bright lights. In the center of the arena stood a figure in standard Academy combat gear. The figure was smaller than most species would be, with no visible natural weapons or special abilities. At the top of the screen, text appeared. Classified. Human Final Trial. Year 847. Authorized personnel only. The timestamp showed exactly 1 year ago. The image quality was poor, like it had been recorded in a hurry. The figure in the arena turned slightly, revealing a face that was definitely human. "What is that?" Nari asked loudly. Her sharp eyes had caught every detail of the brief image. Professor Kolmesh quickly shut down the display. His antennae twitched nervously as he fumbled with the controls. "Nothing important," he said quickly. "Just a corrupted file from old training records." But the damage was done. Every student in the classroom had seen the image. Murmurs started throughout the room as aliens began talking to each other. "Did that say Human Final Trial?" Hyun asked. His yellow eyes were narrow with interest. "That's what I saw," Day confirmed. His analytical mind had recorded every detail. The timestamp indicated it was from last year's final examinations. Tae's gills fluttered with curiosity. "But the Commandant said humans couldn't handle basic training. How did they get to final trials?" Professor Kolmesh was working frantically to bring up the correct historical footage. His clicking sound showed he was nervous and upset. "Please, focus on the lesson," he said. "The Battle of Zerion Prime is much more important than corrupted computer files." But the students weren't listening anymore. They were all talking about what they had seen. The image of a human in the Academy's final trial arena had created dozens of questions. After class, the four friends walked together toward the dining hall. They couldn't stop talking about the mysterious footage. "Something doesn't make sense," Hyun said. "If humans were so weak and stupid, how did they reach the final trials?" "Logic dictates that there are missing pieces to this puzzle," Day agreed. "The timeline suggests those humans completed nearly a full year of training." Nari flapped her wings thoughtfully. "And why was the file classified? Training footage is usually available for study purposes." Tae bubbled with confusion. "Maybe the humans failed so badly that the Academy doesn't want other species to see it. It might be embarrassing." "Or maybe," Hyun said slowly, "there's something else they don't want us to see." That night, Hyun couldn't sleep. His mind kept returning to the image they had seen. Something about it bothered him, but he couldn't figure out what. He got up from his bed and walked to his computer terminal. Using his student access codes, he began searching the Academy's database for information about last year's human students. What he found was strange and incomplete. The record showed 3 humans had been enrolled: Min, Bo, and Hana. All 3 were listed as completing their full year of study, but their individual scores and performance records were mostly missing, or marked as classified. What information was available painted a picture of terrible failure. Physical strength tests showed they ranked at the bottom. Speed trials put them last in every category. Weapons training scores were embarrassingly low. Tactical analysis results were marked as below acceptable standards, but there were other details that didn't fit the pattern. Medical records showed all 3 humans had visited the Academy hospital multiple times, but the reasons for their visits were marked as classified. Equipment requisition forms showed they had been issued replacement gear more often than any other students. Most strange of all, the final trial participation list showed all 3 human names. Students who failed basic training never made it to final trials. The final trial was only for students who had proven themselves capable warriors. The next morning, Hyan shared his findings with his friends. They gathered in a quiet corner of the Academy library to discuss what they had discovered. "This makes no sense," Nari said, reading through the information on Hyan's datapad. "How can someone rank last in everything but still qualify for final trials?" Day's crystal body flickered as he processed the data. "There are logical inconsistencies in these records. Either the scoring system was changed or important information has been removed." Tay studied the medical records with his large black eyes. "Why would human hospital visits be classified? Usually, medical information is only hidden if it involves serious injuries or unusual circumstances." "Maybe they got hurt a lot because they were so weak," Nari suggested. "The Academy probably had to keep treating them for minor injuries. Or maybe," Hyun said quietly, "they got hurt because they were doing things other students couldn't do." The group decided to investigate further. Over the next few days, they used their student access to search for more information. They talked to older students who had been at the Academy the previous year. They asked professors about training changes that had been implemented recently. What they found made the mystery deeper. Several students from the previous year had transferred to other schools immediately after graduation. This was unusual because Academy graduates were normally eager to begin their military careers. The training facilities had undergone major repairs during the summer break. New safety systems had been installed in several areas. Some equipment had been completely replaced with stronger versions. Most interesting of all, the final trial procedures had been changed significantly. New rules had been added about maximum damage limits and mandatory safety breaks. The trial that had remained the same for over 200 years had been completely restructured. Why would they change the final trial after so many years? Dae wondered. The current format was designed to test every aspect of military capability. Maybe the old version was too dangerous, Tay suggested. If students were getting seriously hurt, they would need to make it safer. But the final trial was supposed to be dangerous, Nari pointed out. It was meant to separate the real warriors from the pretenders. Making it safer would defeat the purpose. Hyan had been quiet while his friends talked. His mind was working on a different possibility. What if they didn't make it safer for future students? He said slowly. What if they made it safer because of what happened with the humans? The other 3 stared at him. The idea was disturbing and didn't make sense with what they knew about human weakness. "That's impossible," Nari said. "Humans are the weakest species in the galaxy. They couldn't possibly have been too successful at the final trial." "Logic supports this conclusion," Day agreed. "Human physical and mental limitations would prevent superior performance in military trials." But Hyan wasn't convinced. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. The missing records, the classified medical files, the sudden changes to Academy procedures, it all pointed to something important being hidden. There's only one way to find out the truth, he said finally. We need to see the actual footage, from the human final trial. That's impossible, Tay said. The file was classified. We don't have access to that level of information. Maybe we don't, Hyun replied with a sly smile. But I know someone who might be able to help us. He was thinking of Vel, a low-level technician who worked in the Academy's computer systems. Vel was a skidder, one of the smaller species that often took support jobs at the Academy. Skidders were known for being helpful and easy to bribe with simple favors. Vel the skidder was exactly what Hyun had hoped for. The small, bug-like alien stood only 3 feet tall with 6 thin arms and large, curious eyes. Skidders were known throughout the galaxy for being helpful and easily impressed by attention from larger, more important species. Hyun found Vel working late in one of the computer maintenance rooms. The little alien was surrounded by floating holographic displays and blinking control panels. His thin fingers moved quickly across multiple keyboards at once. Vel, Hyun said in his most friendly voice, I need a small favor. The skidder's large eyes turned toward him with excitement. It wasn't often that elite combat students talked to maintenance workers. Of course, honored student. How can Vel help the mighty Valkyrian warrior? Hyun felt a little guilty about manipulating the friendly alien, but his curiosity was too strong. I'm working on a research project about Academy history. I need to access some old training footage from last year. Vel can help with that, the skidder said eagerly. What specific files does the honored student require? Footage from the human final trials, Hyun said carefully. For my project on different species training methods. Vel's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. His 6 arms stopped moving across the keyboards. Ah, those files are marked as classified honored student. Vel cannot access them without special authorization. Hyun had expected this. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small device. It was a personal entertainment unit loaded with the latest music and games from the Valkyrian homeworld. Such devices were expensive and highly desired by support staff who couldn't normally afford them. I understand the difficulty, Hyun said, placing the device on Vel's work table. Perhaps this small gift from my homeworld might help with your research into accessing historical files. Vel's eyes grew even larger as he stared at the entertainment device. His thin fingers reached out to touch it reverently. This is too generous, honored student. Vel will find a way to help with the research project. I'll need to view the files tonight, Hyun added. And I'll have 3 friends with me. We're working on this project together. Vel understands completely. Meet Vel in Archive Room 7 at midnight. Vel will have everything prepared. That night, the 4 friends made their way through the darkened Academy corridors. The Academy was different at night, quieter and more mysterious. Emergency lighting cast long shadows on the walls. Security patrols moved through distant hallways like ghosts. Archive Room 7 was deep in the Academy's lower levels. It was a small chamber filled with old computer equipment and storage devices. The walls were lined with servers that hummed quietly in the darkness. Vel was waiting for them with multiple screens already activated. The little skidder was nervous but excited to help. Vel has located the files, honored students, but accessing them required some creative programming. You mean you hacked into classified systems? Nari asked with surprise. Vel prefers the term advanced technical research, the skidder replied with what might have been a smile. The files are available for viewing, but they must stay on the secure servers. Vel cannot copy them or transfer them anywhere else. That's fine, Hyun said. We just need to see what's in them. Vel's 6 hands moved across multiple control panels. Vel has found something interesting already. The human files are much larger than normal student records. Most final trial footage is only a few hours long. The human files contain over 48 hours of continuous recording. 48 hours? Day asked. His crystal body flickered. With surprise, Final trials normally last only 6 to 8 hours maximum. Perhaps the humans required multiple attempts, Tay suggested. If they kept failing, they might have needed extra time. Or perhaps, Vel said quietly, the humans faced a different type of trial altogether. The little skidder brought up additional files on his screens. Vel found other interesting information while accessing the records. Would the honored students like to see the Academy modification reports from last summer? Academy modifications? Nari asked. Yes, major structural changes were made to Training Complex 5 where the final trials take place. New reinforcement barriers were installed, the weapon systems were upgraded with additional safety limiters, and most interesting, the medical station was expanded to 3 times its original size. Hyun felt a chill run down his scaled spine. Why would they need a bigger medical station for final trials? Vel found the work orders, the skidder continued. The old medical station was completely destroyed during the human trials. It had to be rebuilt from scratch with better equipment and stronger protective barriers. The 4 friends looked at each other with growing confusion. Nothing they were learning matched the story of weak, failing humans. Show us the injury reports from last year, Day requested. His analytical mind was starting to piece together a disturbing pattern. Vel brought up medical records on another screen. What they saw made no sense with what they had been told. During the final month of human enrollment, Academy medical facilities had treated an unusual number of serious injuries. Look at these dates, Nari pointed to the screen. 7 Velkarian students, 5 Christex, 3 Zephyrians, and 4 Aquarans all required emergency medical treatment during the final 2 weeks of human enrollment. What type of injuries? Hyun asked. Vel read from the records. Severe psychological trauma, nervous system shock, acute stress reactions, and something called existential combat fear. Vel doesn't understand what that last one means. Neither do I, Tay admitted. I've never heard of existential combat. Fear as a medical condition. The really strange part, Vel continued, is that none of these injured students would explain how they got hurt. They all claimed they couldn't remember or refused to discuss the incidents. Day's crystal body was now flickering rapidly as he processed the information. This suggests a pattern of systematic psychological trauma affecting multiple species. But what could cause such widespread mental distress? Maybe, Hyun said slowly, it wasn't what happened to the other students. Maybe it was what they saw happen to the humans. That doesn't make logical sense, Nari protested. Watching weak students fail shouldn't cause psychological trauma. If anything, it should boost confidence in superior students. Unless, Vel said quietly, the humans didn't fail. The little skidder's words hung in the air like a heavy weight. None of them wanted to believe what he was suggesting, but the evidence was becoming harder to ignore. Show us the Academy's official performance rankings from last year, Hyun requested. Vel brought up another file. The rankings showed exactly what they expected, humans at the bottom of every category. But as Day studied the numbers more carefully, he noticed something strange. These scores don't match the other data we've seen, he announced. According to the injury reports and facility modifications, something significant happened during human enrollment. But these scores suggest nothing unusual occurred at all. Vel notices something else, the skidder added. The scoring methodology was changed immediately after the humans left. The Academy now uses completely different evaluation criteria for rating student performance. They changed how they score students? Tay asked. Yes! The old system measured raw capability and results. The new system focuses more on technique and form. Many activities that used to receive high scores now receive low scores, even if they achieve better results. Nari's feathers ruffled with confusion. Why would they change a scoring system that had worked for hundreds of years? Vel thinks, the little alien said carefully, that maybe the old scoring system showed results that the Academy didn't want to see. Hyun was starting to understand. You mean the human scores might have been too high under the old system? It's just a theory, Vel said quickly. But the timing is very suspicious. Everything changed right after the humans left. The group spent the next hour reviewing more files. They found equipment requisition forms showing that the humans had been issued and reissued gear at an incredible rate. Standard Academy weapons and armor had been replaced multiple times during their enrollment. Either the humans were incredibly careless with equipment, Day observed, or they were using it in ways that caused extreme wear and damage. Or, Hyon said grimly, they were using it more intensively than any other students ever had. Most disturbing discovery came when Vel showed them the staff rotation schedules. During the final month of human enrollment, over 30 Academy instructors had requested immediate transfers to other positions. Many of them were veteran trainers who had worked at the Academy for decades. 30 instructors left in 1 month? Nari asked with disbelief. Yes, and look at their specializations, Vel pointed to the list. Combat psychology, advanced weapons training, survival instruction, and tactical warfare. These were the Academy's most experienced combat teachers. Why would the best instructors all leave at the same time? Tay wondered. Vel found some of their resignation letters. The Skitter said quietly. Most cite irreconcilable differences with current training philosophy and concerns about Academy safety protocols. They were scared, Hyon realized. The instructors were scared of something that happened during human training. Vel's 6 hands moved nervously across the control panels as he accessed the classified footage. The screens flickered and changed colors several times before stabilizing. Warning messages appeared and disappeared as the little skitter bypassed. Security protocols. Vel must warn the honored students one more time, he said quietly. These files are protected by the highest security measures in the Academy. Someone really didn't want anyone to see this footage. We understand, Hyon replied. His yellow eyes were fixed on the main screen. Show us what really happened. The screen filled with a view of Training Complex 5. The 4 friends recognized it immediately. It was the Academy's most advanced combat facility. The complex was enormous, with multiple levels and terrain types. It could simulate any battlefield, condition from any known world. This is the final trial arena, Vel explained. Students who reach this point have already proven themselves in every other category. The final trial is meant to test everything they've learned under extreme conditions. How long does it normally take to complete? Day asked. Most students finish in 6 to 8 hours, Vel replied. The record holder completed it in 4 hours and 37 minutes. That record has stood for over 50 years. The timestamp on the footage showed it was from exactly 1 year ago. At the bottom of the screen, text identified the first participant. Minnow, human. Final trial attempt, a figure appeared at the entrance to the arena. Min was smaller than most species, with no visible natural weapons or armor. The human wore standard Academy combat gear, basic armor, a standard energy weapon, and a small pack of supplies. He looked so ordinary, Nari observed. No claws, no natural weapons, no obvious advantages. Humans have poor physical capabilities, Tay agreed. This should be over quickly. But as they watched, something unexpected began to happen. The trial started with a series of physical obstacles designed to test speed and agility. Most students would leap, fly, or use their natural abilities to overcome these challenges quickly. Min did something different. Instead of trying to match the speed of other species, the human began to move with careful, methodical precision. When faced with a gap too wide to jump, Min didn't waste time trying. Instead, the human found loose metal panels and built a bridge. That's not how you're supposed to complete that obstacle, Nari said with confusion. The rules don't specify how obstacles must be completed, Day pointed out. Only that they must be completed. As the trial continued, Min's approach became more clear. The human wasn't trying to match other species' natural advantages. Instead, Min was finding entirely new ways to solve problems. When faced with a combat drone programmed to test reflexes, most students would rely on speed to avoid its attacks. Min did something that made the four friends lean forward in their seats. Instead of running from the drone, the humans studied its movement patterns for several minutes. Then Min began dismantling parts of the arena itself, using the materials to build a trap. The drone was captured and disabled without Min having to match its speed at all. "That's actually brilliant," Day admitted. His analytical mind was impressed despite himself. "But it's so slow," Hyun protested. "He's taking forever to complete each section." "Look at the timer," Vel said quietly. "Min is actually moving faster through the overall trial than most students. While other species rely on quick reflexes for each individual challenge, the human is solving multiple problems at once." As they watched, this pattern continued. Min faced each challenge with the same methodical approach. When the arena's environmental systems created a poisonous gas cloud, most students would hold their breath and run through quickly. Min took time to analyze the gas, then created a simple breathing filter from arena materials. When combat robots attacked with overwhelming firepower, most students would rely on armor and natural toughness to survive the assault. Min disappeared into the arena's ventilation system and spent an hour rewiring the robots to fight each other instead. "This is not how the trial is supposed to work," Nari said with growing unease. "The human is treating it like a puzzle instead of a combat test," Tay observed, but what really disturbed the watching aliens was Min's response to injury and fatigue. When a trap damaged the human's armor, Min didn't slow down or call for medical assistance. Instead, the human used the damaged armor pieces to create better tools. When exhaustion should have forced a rest period, Min simply kept working. The human's movements became more focused and efficient, not slower and clumsier like other species would experience. "How is he still moving?" Hyun asked. "That level of activity should have exhausted any biological being hours ago." "Humans appear to have unusual endurance capabilities," Vel observed. "Min has been active for 18 hours without any significant decrease in performance." The real shock came when they reached the trial's final challenge. Every student faced the same ultimate test, a combat scenario against multiple opponents, in a rapidly changing environment. It was designed to push students beyond their limits and see how they performed under impossible pressure. Most students fought bravely, but eventually were overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies and environmental hazards. The trial was meant to test how long someone could maintain combat effectiveness against hopeless odds. Min approached the final challenge differently than any student in Academy history. Instead of immediately engaging the enemies, the human spent the first hour of the battle studying the arena and the attack patterns. Then Min began systematically destroying the arena's support systems. The four friends watched in stunned silence as Min turned the final challenge into something completely different. Instead of fighting enemies in the arena, the human made the arena itself fight the enemies. Support beams became falling weapons. Environmental controls became traps. The very ground became quicksand under enemy feet. "This is impossible," Nari whispered. "No student has ever modified the arena itself during the final trial." "The rules don't forbid it," Day said slowly, "but no one has ever thought to try it before." What happened next left all four aliens speechless. With the arena working as an ally instead of an obstacle, Min began hunting the remaining enemies with methodical precision. But the humans' behavior during combat was unlike anything they had ever seen. Min moved through the battlefield like a predator, but not in the way other warrior species did. There was no rage, no excitement, no battle fury. Instead, the human displayed a cold, calculating efficiency that was more disturbing than any roar or battle cry. When enemies tried to surrender, Min accepted the surrender and then used the surrendering enemies to gather information about remaining threats. When enemies tried to hide, the human tracked them with patient persistence that never wavered. When enemies fought desperately, Min simply outlasted them. "He's not fighting like a warrior," Hyun said with confusion. He's fighting like, like a hunter, Tay finished. But not hunting for food or territory, hunting like it's just a job to be completed. The footage showed Min completing the final trial in a way that no academy instructor had thought possible. Instead of being defeated by impossible odds, the human had changed the rules of engagement completely. The trial that was meant to test students against overwhelming force had become a demonstration of overwhelming force applied by the student. The timestamp showed that Min had completed the entire trial in 6 hours and 12 minutes. Not a record, but well within normal ranges. But the method of completion was so far outside normal expectations that the Academy's scoring systems couldn't properly evaluate it. "Show us the next human," Hyun said quietly. Bo's trial was even more disturbing. The second human faced the same challenges as Min, but with a completely different approach. Where Min had been methodical and calculating, Bo was creative and adaptive in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics. When faced with impossible jumps, Bo didn't build bridges or find alternate routes. Instead, the human somehow convinced the arena's gravity controls to provide assistance. When attacked by superior numbers, Bo turned the enemy's own weapons against them through technical modifications that shouldn't have been possible with basic equipment. How did he reprogram military-grade combat drones with basic tools? Day asked. His analytical mind was struggling to understand what he was seeing. And how did he modify the arena's environmental controls during active combat? Nari added. Bo's approach to the final challenge was completely different from Min's, but equally effective. Instead of hunting enemies or modifying the arena, Bo convinced the enemies to fight each other. Through a combination of deception, misdirection, and psychological manipulation, the human turned the final combat trial into a philosophical discussion that ended with the enemies surrendering voluntarily. "That shouldn't be possible," Tay said, with shock. "Combat drones are programmed to fight. They can't be talked out of their mission parameters." "Apparently they can," Vel said quietly. "At least when humans are doing the talking." The archive room fell into complete silence after the footage ended. The four friends sat staring at the blank screens, their minds struggling to process what they had witnessed. Everything they had believed about humans, about warfare, and about their own superiority had been shattered in the span of a few hours. Vel was the first to speak, his small voice barely a whisper in the darkness. "There are more files, honored students. The aftermath reports. Would you like to see what happened after the trials ended?" Hyun nodded slowly, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know more. His yellow eyes had lost their usual confident gleam. "Show us everything." Vel's 6 hands moved across the controls with nervous energy. New files appeared on the screens. Official reports, instructor evaluations, and academy administrative records from the days following the human trials. The first document that appeared was a formal report from the Academy's senior combat instructors. As Day read it aloud, his crystal body flickered with distress. "Evaluation of human combat capabilities. Final assessment," he began. "After observing the 3 human students complete their final trials, this board of instructors must report the following conclusions. Human combat doctrine represents a fundamental shift in warfare philosophy that renders traditional military training inadequate." "What does that mean?" Tay asked, his gills fluttering nervously. Vel brought up additional documents. "It means the instructors realized that everything they taught about fighting was wrong when compared to human methods." The next report was even more disturbing. It came from Professor Kolmesh himself, written just days after the human trials ended. "Personal observation log," Nari read from the screen. "The 3 human students have completed their trials using methods that do not appear in any military textbook. They have demonstrated capabilities that suggest our understanding of combat effectiveness is fundamentally flawed." The report continued with detailed analysis of each human's performance. Min's methodical approach was described as impossible to counter because it operates outside expected parameters. Bo's creative solutions were labeled as beyond current tactical theory. Hana's predatory efficiency was simply noted as disturbing on a psychological level. But the most shocking revelation came in the instructor's final conclusion. These humans did not simply pass their trials. They revealed that our trials were inadequate tests of real combat ability. They have shown us that we have been training warriors to fight yesterday's wars while they are prepared for tomorrow's conflicts. The instructors were afraid, Hyan realized. They saw humans fight and realized they didn't understand warfare at all. Vel brought up medical reports from the students who had observed the human trials. What they found explained the psychological trauma that had affected so many academy students during that final month. Witness interview. Subject: Zektar, Velkarian, senior combat student, Vel read aloud. When asked to describe the human trials, subject became extremely agitated and refused to provide details. When pressed, subject stated, "They don't fight like anything alive. They fight like death itself has learned to think." Another interview was even more disturbing. Witness interview. Subject: Krillnex, Kristek, tactical analysis student. Subject's statement: "The humans made our best tactical students look like children playing with toys. They didn't just win their trials, they proved that the trials themselves were meaningless." The pattern continued through dozens of witness statements. Students from every species reported the same basic reaction. Watching humans fight had made them question everything they thought they knew about combat and warfare. "Look at this," Day said, pointing to a psychological evaluation report. The Academy's mental health staff treated 43 students for what they called existential combat crisis in the weeks following the human trials. "What's existential combat crisis?" Nari asked. Vel found the medical definition on another screen. "A psychological condition where a warrior loses confidence in their fundamental understanding of warfare after witnessing combat methods that render their training obsolete." The four friends realized they were looking at evidence of a crisis that had shaken the very foundation of the academy. The humans hadn't just succeeded at their trials. They had accidentally proven that every other species' approach to warfare was primitive and outdated. But the most disturbing document was yet to come. Vel accessed a classified communication from Academy Commandant Vexthul to the Galactic Military Council. The message was marked with the highest security classifications. Emergency communication, classification level ultimate, Hyan read slowly. Subject: immediate termination of human military training programs. The message detailed the Commandant's recommendation that humans be banned not just from the Academy, but from all military training throughout the galaxy. The reason given was not human weakness, but exactly the opposite. Human military methodology represents an unacceptable paradigm shift that threatens the stability of current galactic military doctrine, the message stated. Their approach to warfare treats concepts such as impossible odds and hopeless situations as minor inconveniences to be solved through application of superior mental flexibility. The Commandant's report continued with an analysis that chilled the watching aliens to their cores. Humans do not fight to win battles. They fight as if the concept of losing simply does not exist in their mental framework. This fundamental difference in psychology makes them incompatible with traditional military command structures. Most concerning, the report concluded, is the human tendency to treat warfare not as a contest between opponents, but as a problem to be solved. They approach combat with the same methodical mindset they apply to engineering challenges or scientific research. This turns every battle into a laboratory experiment where failure simply provides data for the next attempt. The final section of the Commandant's message contained the real reason for the human ban. Recommendation: Immediate implementation of permanent restrictions on human military development. Human combat capabilities, if allowed to develop naturally, could destabilize the current balance of galactic power within a single generation. The Academy wasn't protecting other students from human weakness, Tay said with dawning horror. They were protecting the galaxy from human strength. Vel brought up one final document, a secret addendum to the Academy's charter that had been added immediately after the human ban. The new rule was simple but absolute. No species may be admitted to galactic military training if their natural combat psychology is fundamentally incompatible with established warfare doctrine. They changed the rules of the entire Academy, Nari said with shock. All to make sure no other species like humans could ever be trained here. But why hide it? Hyun asked. Why not just admit that humans are different? Vel's answer was quiet but certain. Because if other species knew the truth about human combat abilities, it would cause panic throughout the galaxy. Every military, every government, every power structure is based on the assumption that they understand warfare. Humans proved that assumption wrong. The little skitter began closing down the files and shutting off the screens. The honored students now know why these records are classified. The truth about humans is too dangerous for galactic stability. As the screens went dark, the four friends sat in silence. Each of them was processing the same terrible realization. They had spent months mocking humans as the weakest species in the galaxy, when in reality humans might be the most dangerous species anyone had ever encountered. We can never tell anyone about this, Day said finally. His analytical mind had already calculated the consequences of this knowledge becoming public. Agreed, Nari whispered. Her proud warrior spirit felt small and fragile after seeing what real warriors looked like. Tay's gills bubbled nervously. If this information got out, it would change everything. Every species would want to know why humans were really banned. Hyun nodded slowly. And some species might decide they want humans as allies instead of keeping them isolated. Or enemies. Vel added quietly. Some might decide that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to exist at all. The group made a pact that night. They would delete all evidence of their investigation and never speak of what they had learned. The secret of human combat capabilities would remain buried in classified files where it belonged. As they left the archive room, each of them carried a new understanding that would change them forever. They had learned that strength was not about claws or speed or natural weapons. They had learned that the most dangerous warrior was not the one who could not be killed, but the one who refused to accept that killing them was possible. But most importantly, they had learned why the galaxy's powers worked so hard to keep humanity isolated on the outer rim of known space. It wasn't because humans were too weak to join galactic civilization. It was because humans were too strong to be allowed to join. In the days that followed, the four friends returned to their normal academy routines.